Hey girl, welcome to Overcoming Narcissistic Relationships with Olivia. I am so happy that you're here and listening to this right now because I have a bucket load of questions for you. The first one is, are you currently in or have you previously been in a toxic relationship before? Have you wasted valuable time and energy hoping that he would change? Do you keep attracting men that aren't good for you or falling for the wrong men? Have you been wondering if you're unhappy and deserve better than what you've been getting? Have you discovered that your partner or your ex-partner is a narcissist or has traits of a narcissist? Are you recovering from narcissistic abuse? Are you wondering how to overcome these relationships and break the cycle of going back to toxic love and toxic men? If you answered yes to any of these, then you are in the right place. This is a feel-good podcast for the woman on her journey to self-love, confidence, and worthiness. Each episode, I will bring to you an inspiring guest or an empowering thought that will help you bust through your fears, connect to your soul, and get clear so that you can elevate yourself in your life and your relationships. Get ready for some real talk and to unapologetically take charge and reclaim the life and relationships that you really want. My name is Olivia, and I'm a relationship and narcissist recovery coach. Bringing women together to create positive change within themselves and others is what I do. Are you with me? Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. I have got Lyly from Evolve and Elevate. She is a fellow coach. Hello, Lyly. Thanks for joining.
Hey.
So today, we actually have a fellow Aussie, which is nice because I always interview a lot of Americans and all this sort of stuff. So it's kind of nice to have someone from the same country. So today we're going to be talking about co-parenting with a narcissist. So I know a lot of you women are either with the narcissist and you have children, you've broken up from the narcissist, separated or divorced, and you're co-parenting, or at least you're trying to, with the narcissist. Or you're still in a relationship, but basically with a narc, not with a narc, have kids with a narc. That's the recap. So I get lots of questions all the time about how do I manage my baby daddy? You know, can you actually make co-parenting work? What sort of strategies can I use? What do I do? And I'm going to be quite frank with you guys. I'm not a mum yet. I don't have kids and I haven't had to co-parent with a narc. So I've brought Lyly on today to talk about her experience, and I guess we'll take it from there and see what kind of advice we can have and insights she can share and that sort of thing. So Lyly, take it away. Tell us a bit about your experience. I know you've got a son. Feel free to fill us in.
Yeah, so I have a beautiful 3.5-year-old, and I have been separated from his dad for almost 3 years, actually. 3 years this month. And our co-parenting relationship hasn't always been the best. But prior to that, our relationship when our son was first born was amazing. He was an amazing dad. No one could fault him. And it wasn't until things started to turn south in, I guess, his career. And then on top of that, like I had my eczema was exacerbated, our son's eczema was exacerbated. That started causing a lot of tension in the relationship. Eventually the relationship broke down and he developed anxiety and depression. And what I found over the last 3 years of trying to co-parent with him was I went to a seminar with Pip McKay. And Pip McKay...
Oh, I love Pip. Isn't it funny how connected everybody is? That's so crazy. Like Lyly and I were just talking before we pressed record about, because, you know, we both went to Tony Robbins UPW. We know this person and that person. And I love Pip. I really want to go to one of her live face-to-face things. I'm guessing she was amazing.
Yeah, so I did her live face-to-face with, I think she was talking about like 22 principles of happiness and success.
Yeah.
And she said something really profound in that session. She brought up this term, feminine narcissist. And I was like, wait, as she was describing this, I was like, that's exactly my ex-partner. Like, you've heard of the normal narcissist where they're very egocentric, control, and it's all about that space. But what the feminine narcissist does is it's about blame. It's about being the victim, and they don't take any accountability for any of their actions. Everything happens to them. It's like the world's fault. It's fucked up and they're not happy. Mm-hmm. And that started playing out in my relationship, in my co-parenting relationship with him. It got really toxic. I was to blame for everything in the relationship that didn't go right. And it became really draining. And it wasn't until I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? Fuck this. Like, this is enough. Like, enough is enough. And I'm not going to be putting myself or my son in this space where I feel like it's a detriment to my own mental health. I could no longer do it. And having to walk away from that. And we've had a really complex co-parenting relationship. We've gone from very highs to very lows, especially over the last year. It's been insane. And it's been the biggest roller coaster of my life. I've gone from filing for a DV, then withdrawing the DV because I then took 100% accountability for my shit. That's, I think, the biggest thing in any sort of relationship, whether you're with a narc or you're not with a narc or you're co-parenting, is really own your shit. And what I mean by that is, well, I chose to be with this person, like however long ago. I made that commitment to be in a relationship with them. I knew him for a month before we started dating, right? 4 months later, I was pregnant. So I decided, it is quick. 4 months later, I was pregnant. There were red flags in the relationship. There were red flags where I was like, maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe I need to leave. So there were warning signs. Did I choose to stay? Yes. And then I guess what developed was then when I filed for DV, I was like, I can't go through this. I can't go through this system. It's fucked. It's flawed. I was mentally drained, physically drained, emotionally drained. So what I did was I actually got myself a coach. So I had the same day I had court and it got adjourned and postponed for another month. And this was a week before Christmas. I got myself a coach. And what that coach took me through was a process about taking responsibility and accountability for everything that had happened. And he took me through this process about, okay, so how do you see yourself in this role? I'm doing everything possible to try and make this work. You know, I was giving and giving and giving, but getting nothing back in return. How do you see him in this relationship? He's stupid. That's what I said. He's stupid, right? And like, I can't deal with him. He makes stupid decisions. Like, I can't stand him sometimes. He's stupid. And then how do you see the co-parenting relationship? Well, it's a fucking roller coaster. So then he brought me back to the perspective of, well, can you see by you seeing that he's stupid and that you seeing that the relationship is a roller coaster, that it's causing you to show up in a certain way? So if I'm already pre-assuming he's stupid and treating him not consciously but unconsciously saying that he's stupid, it's then going to impact the relationship. It's going to impact how I communicate with him. It's then going to impact everything around our son because I think he's stupid, that he can't do anything, that he has to be babied. What that did for me is I actually jumped on the phone with him that same night. So the same day I had court, same night I had a coaching session. After the coaching session, I actually jumped on a call with my ex and was like, you know what? I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for all the shit that I've done. I'm sorry for, you know, treating you like a certain way and acting like that, you know, this relationship was really toxic. It was a roller coaster and like I own my part of it. And then that opened up a conversation. So I told him I'll drop the DV. It opened up a conversation and we had a heart-to-heart. But during this heart-to-heart, it was literally him blaming me for everything, which I was like, okay, that's what he needs to say, that he needs to say his piece so that all that energy and emotion and tension can be let go of. So earlier this year, we did have our heart-to-heart. And then what happened was we came up with a plan of how we're going to move forward. We'd been in this toxic sort of high conflict co-parenting relationship for almost 2 years. How are we going to be different? How's this year going to be different? How are we going to walk into 2019 being different? And we literally mapped out a plan. So everything from his first overnight stay to like what our son needs, to changeovers, to communication, like anything you could think of, we tried to put it in this document so that we could move forward. And for a while it did work. Like our son had his first overnight stay with him. Things were going well after taking responsibility for my stuff. That's like in any relationship, I think that's all you can do. You can only take responsibility for your stuff. As much as we expect them to be a certain way and do certain things, we can't do that. Having those expectations end up fucking us up.
Totally.
In the most, yeah, they fuck us up because we're living with then an expectations of them and not then appreciating them for what they are and what they're doing. Yes, they may be a narcissist or have certain elements that we don't agree with, but then at the end of the day, when it comes to co-parenting, the thing that only matters is what's in the best interest of my child. It always comes back to that. Like, am I making a decision right now from a space of love and love for my child? Or am I making a decision from a space of emotions, whether it be anger, sadness, resentment, hurt? Have I not dealt with all that? As a co-parent, if you don't deal with those emotions, you're bringing that into your relationship with your co-parent. You're also bringing that into your relationship with your child. That then impacts your child. Like my son picks up on everything energetically.
Yeah,
whether you
like sponges, they absorb everything.
Yeah, 100%. And he might not understand explicitly what's going on, but he can sense it. He knows when something's going on with myself and his dad. He knows when like I'm not in a good space because of like stuff that's happened. So not taking care of our own healing, that is, I think, the first key in any sort of dealing with a narcissist. It's taking care of yourself and making sure you've actually come into terms of your relation, like what you think and what you perceive about that relationship now. I can say, I don't resent my ex. I've been through shoving incidences with him where he's refused to let me leave with our son, and I've had to call the police. I've had him come over to the house, unexpected, knocking on the door, threatening lawyers, refusing to leave, had to call the police. I lived in a state of fear for a while. I was in my own home, and every noise, every doorbell, anything that I could hear, I would be on high alert. I was on fight or flight. So I've been through some crazy shit with him. But at the end of the day, my feelings towards him is he's hurting and all he needs is love. But I can't give him that love. But also I can send that from afar and acknowledge everything that's happened is not necessarily a reflection on me. I can take accountability for how things led up to the way they are. And that is then me owning my power. If I don't have that power, then I can't then give that to my son. I can't show him and lead by example, right? If I'm not dealing with my shit, how's he then going to deal with his shit when he grows up? So part of it is really healing yourself and making sure like you come to a place in a point where you can be like, I appreciate that relationship. And the reason why I appreciate that relationship was, especially if you're a mom, they gave me the beautiful blessing. They gave me my child. So how can you have hate and resentment for them? Because if you have hate and resentment for them, you're telling your child you hate and resent them 50% of who they are. Because who they are is a part of their dad. Yeah, part of them. It's 100% a part of them. So that's a really powerful thing to do, is just get really accountable with all your stuff. And then in terms of dealing with them, I guess the only thing is, for me, if they're not doing anything that you think is going to be detrimental to your child, then sometimes it's just easier to let it go and don't pick those fights. Pick your battles with any narcissist, whether they be a feminine narcissist or a control freak or an ego one. Like, there is no point always giving them your power and then getting into a fight with them, because that just means you're losing power. Every time you're in that power dynamic, you're losing. Yeah. You're engaging. No one's going to win, right?
Can I ask you a quick question, Lyly?
Yeah,
just for the listeners, can you define the difference between what a feminine narcissist, like according to that language, or was it just a...
So I guess masculine narcissists would be your typical narcissist, right? They're very egocentric, very controlling, manipulative in that space. Whereas I would say a feminine narcissist is someone who blames. They don't take accountability. They don't allow themselves to be vulnerable. And they're the victim. They're the victim in the story. Nothing's their fault. Everything is done to them. They're never in the wrong. So that's, I guess, how I would define the difference between the masculine narcissist and then a feminine narcissist. So the masculine is the typical one dominant. You hear about. The typical one you hear about in literature and stuff like that. So that's why when I heard it in Pip McKay's seminar, I was like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Oh, it was a huge aha moment.
Yeah. It's always helpful when you can kind of like, not that labels are always empowering, but I find that in this area especially it can be, because it's like, oh, so now I know what's happened and now I know why he was acting the way he was and that's what he is and all that sort of stuff. So it actually helps you piece the puzzle pieces together easier by being able to kind of like recognize where they might fit in that.
100%. And I think with any sort of narcissist, it comes back down to the 6 human needs, as Tony talks about. You've got certainty, you've got variety, you've got love and connection, you've got significance, growth and contribution. But with any narcissist, they're doing it to meet one of their needs, whether it be positive or negative. You can meet your needs in both positive and negative ways. For example, certainty, right? Certainty, I could plan my day out. I know exactly what I'm doing. But also certainty could mean I can go eat junk food and I know that it's going to make me feel good in the moment. So that's a negative way you could do it. So for a narcissist, if they're trying to meet one of their needs by being a victim or being controlling, it gives them a sense of certainty and significance, right? They're able to play on that and use that to then get their way or use that to then fulfill one of their needs. And that's all it comes back to. They're doing it just to fulfill one of their needs.
100%. And this is actually, it's funny you mention it, because this is what I talk about in my program, Blossom and the Beast. And I actually just did a public speaking engagement over the weekend all about this, but for business, right? And I find that particularly with narcissists, the main need that they seem to, or the predominant one, is significance. So they always want to feel significant to other people. And that's why they always want to get their supply from their partners, ex-partners, their kids, their family members, people at work, to build themselves up and have that level of certainty of like, I am significant. Even if my partner or ex or whatever reacts in a negative way, even though it's negative attention, it's like, it still feeds that significance. Like, I must mean something to them if they're getting angry and reacting to me. And that might be unresourceful, not a great way to, meet that need, but it works for them.
100%. Yeah, totally. Yeah, you've nailed it on the head. So it's all about them just fulfilling their needs, and even if it is in a negative context. So I guess the best way as co-parents, or even just dealing with a narcissist, is come from a place of love. As hard as that is to say, come from a place of love, and just know that whatever they're doing, whatever their actions are, is not necessarily a reflection on you. They're hurting and they're dealing with stuff in their own way. And this is how they've either been taught or they've just learned to adapt with their pain. And they obviously haven't dealt with their
stuff,
their bullshit, their baggage.
And I think you've touched on a few good points. So I made some notes as we were talking, because I was like, oh, I can point this out, and this is really helpful for the listeners. So Lyly was talking about how she was like doing everything she could to make the relationship work. Yeah. And so that can actually be a element of overfunctioning in the relationship. So instead of just doing her 50%, she was obviously doing more than that to try and make it work with him, put the child first, all that sort of stuff. But that sometimes, and I've done this too, Lyly, so it's not a criticism at all, and most of my clients do this too, to make it work, we often function more. But by doing that, it actually feeds into the dysfunction of the toxicity in the relationship, because we're not allowing that person to step up. Because often I find these mothers want their partners or ex-partners to step up and be a good dad, to step up and prioritize the child, to step up and do their bit. So I really like the fact that you came up with like a co-parenting agreement, so to speak. I think that's really wonderful, because that way you can both communicate, somewhat be on the same page, you can prioritize stuff. You said it worked for a while there. So how long did it work for, and why do you think it stopped working?
So it worked for about 2 months. And then what happened was, because all the underlying hurt hadn't been dealt with on his side, it then started impacting the relationship. So what happened was we got into a couple of minor agreements, and they were left unresolved. And then that minor agreement led into a big explosive agreement, with him turning around and kind of just saying, don't text me anymore. I was like, well, don't talk to me. It was like, don't text me anymore, or don't talk to me anymore. And I was like, well, what the fuck do I do with that? Like, what do you mean? And I was just like, you know what? Fuck this. I'm just like, I'm not even going to respond to this. I'm just going to just keep doing me and like keep raising our son. And we had a scheduled appointment for our son, and I ended up having to change it. But after his message, I was like, well, do I text him? Do I not? I made a choice not to. I made a conscious choice. You know what? You've told me not to text you. I'm just going to respect that. If you're going to talk to me like that, then you've got to have to then deal with the consequences. So what ended up happening is, then he called me on the same day and he blew up. He lost his shit. And I got a call from his mother later saying that he was suicidal.
Right.
So then from that point on, I was just like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this anymore. It's not the first time I've heard he's been suicidal. And I was just like, you know what? I need to step away from this and step back from this for a moment, because it's not healthy right now. And if that's where you're going, obviously you've got stuff you need to deal with. And
totally.
You go deal with your stuff, and I'll do what I need to do. And I stepped up, and obviously you do what you need to do as a mom, right? You take care of your children, you take care of yourself, you provide for them. That led to the deterioration of our, I guess, agreement that we had in place. So I think if two people don't kind of deal with their shit, it does become quite hard, as much as you want to move forward. If one person's dealing with it and the other person's not, you find that there'll be moments where you will clash again, because for them, it's still very raw, and for them, it's like, it's a trigger. So any little thing then can trigger them off. So yeah, it does make the co-parenting relationship complex, but if both parents can then kind of just put their shit aside, deal with it, and then go, okay, so what's really in the best interest of my child? Like, am I actually coming from a place where down the track they're going to respect me and remember me for what I've done for them? Or are they going to then resent me for what I'm doing because I've created like a toxic childhood for them? I mean, we all have childhood traumas, regardless of how, as parents, we're going to fuck our kids up. Like,
I had this conversation with my coach actually a few months ago, because we were doing inner child work, and I was kind of like, I came to this realization where I'm like, no matter what you do, you can give the child the best possible childhood ever, but if they've perceived something as being they couldn't have something, or they weren't good enough in this moment, or they've made something up to mean something in their mind, like, at the end of the day, you can only do the best you can do. That's all you can literally do. And it's up to that child, whether they know it or not, and usually they don't, to put meaning on that. And something I was going to mention too was, like, you described it as being like a high conflict co-parenting relationship. And so I'm just talking from personal experience, right? And I've said this to my parents before, so this is not news or anything that I shouldn't be saying. But my parents went through a really messy divorce when I was in my teenage years, and they probably should have got divorced many, many years before that. But what I found upon reflection was that because those two were having such a high conflict situation constantly between them, me as a child, I didn't want to add to the stress or add any more issues to their relationship because, we had financial stuff going on. Like, it was always some sort of stress happening. And as a kid, I've discovered recently that I didn't feel like I was safe to express my needs because I didn't want to add to their levels of stress or conflict, right? And so for the women that are listening to this is really important, because what can happen is that we do get very concerned with, like, the focus being on the narcissist not doing their part or the toxic partner. But it does take two to tango, and we often do have a choice if we remain in that toxicity, because it can't be toxic if you're not there, right? You can leave that person to be toxic all on their own, but if you're deciding to engage in that, that's where it really festers. And so if you can't leave for you, or you can't improve the relationship for you two, then really think about the kid, because, like, at the end of the day, as Lyly said, something's going to happen. You're going to fuck them up in some way, whether, you intend to or not. Like, we're humans, we make mistakes, we have flaws. But I think as well as, like, creating an atmosphere where the child can feel safe and secure to express their needs. And if you two aren't at each other's necks all the time, that provides more of an opportunity and a space for that child to do that. And so I have a lot of women that come to me that are mums that wanting to co-parent, don't know how, want advice and all that sort of stuff. That's one thing I would be cautious and conscious of, is the more high conflict the situation is and the longer term that it is going that way, the more it can have an effect on the kid in terms of not feeling like they can express themselves. And, because kids are sponges, they absorb everything. They absorb your energy. They can sense stuff going on in the house. They can sense your relationship between you and their dad and whatnot. So, yeah, I thought I'd just kind of share that with everybody.
Yeah, 100%. I think at the end of the day, your kids pick up on everything. It becomes a question of, how do you want to be a role model for them, right? And how do you want to lead by example? Your relationship with anyone, regardless if it's an intimate relationship or it's, you're no longer together, well, then how are you leading by example? Are you showing them that, high conflict is normal? Because if that's what they think, if that's what they see, they're going to think that's normal because they don't know otherwise.
Yeah.
Their first 5 years of life, especially their first 5 years of life, you're putting in place everything that's going to be around their personality. You're embedding all the
imprinting stages, isn't it?
Yeah, you're imprinting on them. Everything they see, everything they sense, everything they're hearing, they pick up on, and then they will start to then adapt into their own personalities and things like that. So it's then really paying attention to those cues.
It must feel like an enormous responsibility as well as a mother. Like, I don't want to jump on here today and make people feel guilty. Like, I'm sure everybody is doing the best that they can with what they have and what they know. But I imagine, like, that sense of responsibility must feel really daunting sometimes.
100%. You have mom guilt, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I have mom guilt. I have mom guilt. Like, recently, at this stage, like, I'm not talking to my former partner. We're actually going through court because I just deemed enough was enough. So I haven't talked to him since the last time he came over here, which was in July, unannounced. And prior to that, maybe April. And I have mum guilt because, like, if something happens, then, like, am I making the right choice? And I'm constantly questioning that. Like, am I actually coming from a space of love, and is my intention pure? Is it really about my son, or is it about myself? So I'm always in that conflict about, am I making the right choice? And it's very difficult to, judge that, especially in your own experiences and stuff. So I think what really helped me was getting a coach to then, because they're an outside perspective, right? There are a lot of amazing coaches in this space in regards to, like, dysfunctional relationships, in regards to co-parenting, in regards to, positive parenting. Because at the end of the day, what we do affects our children, and they're the next generation. So it comes down to, what am I going to do that's going to be the most self-loving act for both myself and my child? And sometimes for me, and this is me personally, so I'm not telling anyone else to do this, but for me personally, I had to walk away. And it took a lot of strength and courage to do that, because my background was, at the age of 18, I found out that my dad at the time, he was actually my stepdad. And my biological dad didn't even know I existed.
Wow. That would have been quite confronting for you.
100%, very confronting. And I don't speak to either of them anymore. I stayed in contact with my biological dad for a year or so. I met him once, and he actually has another daughter named Lyly, which is really weird.
What? You're kidding.
I'm not kidding.
That's so weird.
Like, yeah, I have a half sister out there named Lyly, but I've never met her because his family didn't know that I existed. And I respect that, because obviously telling your family that, you've got another child somewhere, it can disrupt the family dynamic. And for me, at the age of 18, I was okay with that. And I've come to terms with that. I'm like, I respect that. That's fine. But then having my son, I didn't want him to have that. I wanted him to have his father in his life, and I fought for a long time to try and make this work. Like, I went above and beyond I used to pack his baby bag for him. I used to supply a baby seat. I supplied a stroller because his dad couldn't afford one. So, and because our son has a lot of allergies, like, I was happy to, because, at one point I was happy to do that. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, when do you step up then?
Yeah, when does he parent?
When do you start parenting? When do I stop babying you so that you step up? Like, I get you've got your own shit, but I've got my own shit too. And I'm still yet able to figure it out and, provide for our son. So when do you do that? And for me, that was just like, enough was enough. I got to a point where she's like, it's not healthy. It's not healthy for me to go and be above and beyond to make your parenting relationship work with your son. It's your responsibility, right? If you can't provide a chair for your son, then, like, what the hell? Like, what do I do with that? Like, yes, I can support you and I get you're struggling and stuff like that, and you've got your own stuff going on. But, if this is what you say you want to do, then when do you take action? And judge them not on what they say, judge them on what they do.
Yeah, that's so important, because words can be so cheap when it comes to a narcissist. They can say whatever, wiggle their way out of any situation. But if they're not doing what they need to do, that's when, it's important to step up and set boundaries and communicate all of that.
100%, yeah. And as you said, setting boundaries is really important in terms of any relationship, especially when you're dealing with a narcissist, right? Have those boundaries in place and really stand your ground with them and be okay with that. And if they choose not to be a part of your child's life, don't force it, because at the end of the day, you're just then only going to cause pain for yourself. You're only going to cause hurt for yourself because you have some sort of expectations of them. Once you can turn, as Tony says, once you can turn expectations into appreciation and then just come from that space, regardless of who they are, then it changes the dynamic of the relationship.
Totally. And I'm going to say a bit of a side note here, just to, I guess, provide a different perspective. So I know a lot of people, going into relationships, marriages, becoming parents with an expectation of keeping the family unit together and all that sort of stuff. And it's, understandable completely. And being a midwife, I see lots of different types of family units and different dynamics and gay relationships and all this sort of stuff. And there's so many women out there that honestly are so desperate for a child or a baby, they're either willing to go out and sleep with anyone just to get pregnant. They get sperm donors, they, ask friends and family to donate, like they do all sorts of stuff just to become a mother. And I've talked to a couple of patients who were really just so desperate to become a mum, and they would have just had a baby with anybody. And so it's kind of like, even though your situation might be unideal right now, at the same time, like, it's so wonderful that you were able to have a child. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's not with the ideal person, but the fact that you don't get to miss out on that experience and really appreciate the fact that you've become a mother. And, once again, as I said, expectations have fallen, might not have been met there, but what a wonderful gift, to actually be able to have that experience in life, to be a mum, to have a child, to have that unbreakable bond with a child that's always going to unconditionally love you and vice versa. Sometimes partners come and go, but children, they're for life. Like, they're biologically linked to you till you die and onwards. And so I just think if anybody needs to take a moment to appreciate that, definitely sit there with that. Your life may not be great right now. You may not be impressed with how they're acting. You might feel like you're actually a sole parent because they're not doing their bit. But the alternative could be to not have this child at all. And as you said before, that's like the gift of the relationship. That's the positive that's come out of this. And they are 50% that person. So, and 50% you. And so it is a beautiful thing, even though the circumstances around it may not be ideal right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah. At the end of the day, regardless of what you perceive the relationship with your co-parent or ex or, the other person, at the end of the day, they gave you a beautiful gift. If it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have this child. No. And yes, you could have had this child with somebody else, but they wouldn't be the same child.
They'd be so different. Totally different. Totally different. Something else you said too, Lyly, was the fact that you got a coach. So I have a question for you. So what prompted you to get a coach? How did you know to get one or hire one for their services? And where did you find one?
So this coach wasn't specifically a relationship coach. I had been dabbling in a coaching program myself, and I opted to get some one-on-one coaching with him. He's more of a mindset coach. So I was already in that space with having coaches and working with coaches. So I reached out to him and was like, look, I've got this shit going on. I really need, I don't know what to do. And then, so I guess because I'm in that space, but through my journey, I've actually met a lot of other coaches who are in this space, and they actually been able to help me and guide me in this process. And it's been really insightful. And if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't see certain things. So like one of them had said, like what he does at his house, you can't control, right? Like that's his place. And I guess you can have expectations around your child and like what their needs are. But at the end of the day, you can't control what they do at their place. You can't. And then I think it's, that was one of those aha moments. It was like what they do, if you're co-parenting, what they do in their time with their child, because it's their child as well, you need to respect that. As hard as it is, like if there's stuff happening and stuff like that, different story if your child comes home injured. That's a different context. But if they're with their child and they're loving their child and the child's healthy and happy, then you just need to let them be. You trying to have control over that. And as mums, we do, right? We try and control everything. They're our children, they're our babies, they're our world. So then when they're not with us, we're protected, right? Like a lioness in her cubs. But while they're with their other co-parent, you need to respect their boundaries and they need to do vice versa. And then I guess when you're bringing other people into the relationship, being aware of how that dynamic can change. Like I got accused of being in a relationship with a friend, like a chick friend of mine. And I was like, where is this coming from? Like, if I was in a relationship, why would it matter? But at the same time, respecting that anyone you bring into your life is also going to be a part of their life, your child's life, but also your former partner's life, because they're going to be then like part of the parenting process.
Yeah.
And when someone new does come along, how do you treat them, right? Do you treat them as like a stepmom, stepdad kind of situation and then put those connotations or those labels on them? But how I see that, if I was to ever bring somebody into my relationship, I would make sure that the other person knows and be respectful of that, because obviously they're still your co-parent at the end of the day. They're still part of your child's life. But also be mindful of the dynamics in that relationship. Like bringing somebody else in for me means there's somebody else to love my child.
I love that.
So if he was to bring somebody else in, at the end of the day, like I've got to trust his judgment that, he thinks that this person is suitable for his child's life. At the end of the day, it's somebody else extra to love your child. It's just like a teacher, right? Like you send your child to school, they have other people to love and care for them as well. You send them to childcare or wherever you send them, it's an additional person who can love and give love to your child. So if you're in that like relationship where your ex was a narc, but now you're in a relationship, be mindful of that dynamic of like, well, letting them know that this is an extra person to love our child. And like back then, our families it was a tribe. It was a community of people. It's only been because of our society and the way we've shifted, we've moved away from that dynamic of, multiple people raising your child.
Like a village.
Like a village.
Yeah.
Yeah, to individual like family dynamics. But I think what's happening is when they're now shifting almost back into that space, because now we're understanding that it takes a village to raise a child. And particularly as like, I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I didn't have the support of my village. And that's like my mom and like her partner and my friends and stuff like that. I wouldn't be able to do what I do if I didn't have that. So it's about seeking out your tribe who's then able to support you, but also then support your child and making sure that you think that they're a good role model for them.
I love that. I really love that. It's so much more an abundant than a scarcity mindset, because I can imagine a lot of people would be like, as you said, like lioness, mama, bear, kind of being like, this is my child, my baby, my most precious thing in my life. And now I've got to, give him or her over to the dad for the weekend. And then he's got this partner and there might be a little bit of jealousy there, might be a bit of resentment, curiosity, negativity or whatever. But the fact that you're like, this could be someone else in this child's life that actually makes it, better or nicer or more abundant, or, that child being more loved. Like it's just more, which I actually really like that. Because I think a lot of people do feel threatened and they're worried. And there's that control factor of like, I can control what goes on in my house, but when I've got to hand that child over for custody reasons for 50% or whatever it is, time at their dad's, it's kind of like, they might be eating junk food, or he might be saying this is okay when it's not. And you might have a bit of influence, but you actually don't have control. And I think a lot of women especially can not waste, but they can get so caught up in trying to control that rather than releasing and surrendering and going, I can only do the best job that I can do when they're with me. And hopefully they'll appreciate that and see that when they get older. And then just trust that even if you were with a partner, right? Just say you have got a healthy relationship, a healthy dynamic, there are things that are going to be thrown at you in life that you can't control anyway. Like whether you're apart, together, toxic, healthy, functional, whatever. But it's really about how you handle things, because you're the leader in your own life and you're the leader for your little family, even if it's just one child, like you're the leader of that little tribe. And so I know from an experience of being a child that was raised in a family that ended up being broken, I think it's really nice, that sort of attitude of being like, you know, the parents doing their best to get along and, you know, welcoming different roles into the dynamic, you know, because so many blended families are happening at the moment and are probably going to continue happening from this point on as well.
Yeah, 100%. And it takes a lot of great strength to do that. It's easy to
say, hard to do.
It's 100%. It's easy to say, hard to do, but it
Yeah.
takes a lot of great strength, because then what you're doing is removing yourself from that. You're removing your ego from that relationship, right? And it's a focus on the child. And at the end of the day, that's what your focus on is, especially as co-parents. At the end of the day, it's your child. What's in your child's best interest? Doesn't matter what the fuck you're going through. Doesn't matter what they're going through. But at the end of the day, is your child happy? Is your child healthy? Is your child thriving? If you find that there are issues that's causing them not to do that, not be happy, not be healthy, not be thriving, to start addressing those issues, but come from a space of love, because it's easy to then attack and blame. Attack and blame it's easy.
Everyone does it. It's like the norm these days. Yeah.
Everyone does it, and that's just because it's the easy go-to, right? It's easy to just attack and blame other people, but then to then take us responsibility and accountability and like, okay, well, how do I then address this in the most empowering way that then is going to resolve the issue, and not have it underlying and stuff like that, and communicate in a way that they actually understand. Because some people, when you communicate with them, they don't understand what you're saying because they don't know what you mean. Sometimes you have to rephrase it. You have to reframe what you're saying so that they can actually understand, because the way I perceive the world is totally different to the way you perceive the world. So when I'm communicating with you, I'm communicating from my reality. You're hearing me from your reality. It's different.
Yeah, perceiving it differently.
Yeah, it's that perception. It's different.
And do you think the coach helped you with that? Because you went from a belief of going, he's stupid, to now what I'm hearing is like, he's hurt and he's just doing the best that he can.
100%. If it wasn't for, I guess, coaching and having that different perspectives, I probably still think he's stupid.
I love the honesty.
I wouldn't have taken accountability for my shit, right? Like for me, I was controlling in that dynamic. Like I was like having these expectations of like what he should be doing, what he should be eating. Here's his food, you know, this is his schedule, this is his routine. When you throw out his routine, it fucks my routine up. It was almost letting go. And like, as you said, if it's those 50-50 custody stuff, right? The biggest thing is enjoy your fucking you time.
Yeah, that's what I reckon. I'm like, if 50% is with him, go out, do what makes you happy, socialize, do your stuff, exercise, do all the stuff that you have to do to get out of the way. And then when the child's with you, fully embrace and have a great time with them. I actually think in some ways it's kind of actually a benefit, because it's like then because a lot of moms are like, oh, I've got no me time, I can't even take a shower, I can't do this, can't do that. And it's like, well, one benefit, not there's many, but one benefit of being in a situation like this is that if the child is at their dad's for 50% of the time, you've got 50% you time that you didn't have before. And so you can have the best of both worlds. Like that's the way I hope that I would perceive things if I was a mother going through this. And no, actually, you know what? I think I would train myself to believe that as a coach I have that ability. So I think, yeah, that's how I would approach that. And I know it's hard to say because I don't have kids, but when the time comes and if that ever does happen, I think that would be my choice.
And as a mom, regardless if you're a full-time mom or, you know, you have 50% custody, the biggest thing is you time. Actually taking care of yourself and making sure you're giving yourself love. You're making sure that you're happy and generally from a space of love. And that's something like I've learned over the last couple of years, especially in my co-parenting relationship and then just my relationship with myself, is I lost myself in my relationship when I was with him completely. The relationship was my everything. So when I did take a step back from that and get into a space of like appreciating myself and giving myself love and giving myself me time, regardless of like how long it is, it's the most beautiful gift I can give to myself, but also to my son. Because if I'm taking care of myself and showing myself love, he can then go do the same. He can give himself love. He can make sure that he's happy. And as you said, you lead by example.
Well, you know, one analogy I absolutely love, I've explained this like 3 times in the last 2 weeks, and I absolutely love it because it's like, I find it's like a bing moment for people, like, oh, that's what that means. So you know how people say you got to fill your cup up first before you can give to others? Yeah. I was like, yeah, I've heard that before. And it was just kind of words. I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds really nice and fluffy. But when I heard this analogy of like, whenever you're on a plane flight and you're sitting there with your child and then, you know, the air hostesses go through the whole, this is what you need to do, this is where that door is, okay, cool, if we're going to basically crash, the oxygen's going to pop down, you have to put your own oxygen mask on first before anybody else, including your child next to you, because if you have no oxygen to put their mask on, you're both going to die, right? I know it sounds a bit blunt, a bit brutal, but you know what I'm trying to say. Whereas if you put the mask on yourself first, you can not only help your child, you can help out other kids, other people on the plane, you know, like It's that idea of like you have to make yourself a priority. And that's a big lesson, I think, for kids as well, is like a lot of mums put everyone else above themselves, and then they suffer.
Yeah.
And then everybody else suffers because of that. So it's a really, really, really valuable lesson. And I'm trying to master that now. So when the time does come, like as a coach, as a woman, as a friend, as a daughter, business owner, all that sort of stuff, right? As a nurse and midwife, if I can master that now, then when the time comes to start a family or whatnot, I'm going to be able to have that ability and that skill to rely on, to have a better quality of life for my kid, for my partner, for the family, all that sort of stuff. It's so, so, so valuable.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And as a mum, you have mum guilt about it.
I bet.
Like, I mean, no,
doesn't
actually,
feel natural, does it?
No, it doesn't. And that's because society doesn't tell you it's okay. Society's expectations, and they're still here, regardless of how, we're in the 21st century or whatever. The mum does a lot of, not to say that dads don't, but, the expectations is like, mum, you do everything. We put our shit on hold for our children, for our partners, for our relationships, being a mom, being a daughter, in our careers and stuff. But we don't actually make it a priority to look after ourselves. Our number one asset is ourselves.
That's so true.
And there is some like guilt around that. And it's being okay with that. Like on my 30th, I actually took 18 days away from my son for the first time.
Aww.
And people are like, what? It's like, how can you do that? I'm like, why can't I do that?
Why
what
not?
do you mean? Why not? Like, your reasons why I can't do that is because society's expectations that I should be around my son 24/7. Well, I'm like, well, no, my expectations and my realities, I need to take care of myself. I need to look after myself. And it wasn't until last year, so he was 2, that I took 18 days away from him. And I did that to celebrate my own 30th and celebrate my life and kind of just get back to grounding myself about like who I am as a person, aside from being a mum. Because I'm not just a mum. No. I'm Lyly too. Who is Lyly?
Multifaceted, yeah.
Yeah, you're multifaceted, right? You're not just a mom, you're not just a daughter, I'm not just a teacher or a coach. I'm also Lyly. Who is Lyly then? And I think a lot of women, we lose that. We lose that when we become mums because we give everything to our children.
Even in relationships.
Yeah, even in relationships.
My relationship was everything.
Yeah.
Like you said that was your identity. And then that's had to shift, you're so right about that. So what do you do then, Lyly, to, I guess, put, woman first and then everything else second? Still a priority, but what do you do, like, just for the mums out there that are like, okay, that all sounds great, but like, how do I practically like do this? For
me, I go to the gym. I do things when my son's asleep sometimes. So it could be just like reading a book for myself or just having that downtime where it's about me. I might do some journaling and like gratitude diary, or for me, I've got a pool. So I sometimes sit outside by the pool during the day and stuff like that. But I've also, because I'm lucky that I have family around me, and I lean on that. So sometimes I'm like, you know what, I need to go dancing. So I'm like, can you please look after him for a couple of hours so I can go dancing? And they're pretty good with that.
Lean into your support systems.
Yeah, lean onto your support systems and be like, you know what, it's okay to take some time for yourself, because you need to. You need to recharge your own energies and fill up your cup, as you said. And if you don't, you're just constantly giving and giving and giving. And you'll get to a point where like you've got nothing to give because you haven't been filling up your own cup. I actually make it a priority to do something once a week that I love for myself.
I love that.
And, whether it's like, if your child's in care, use that time. If your child's in care, or, if they're asleep, or if you can lean on someone, even for half an hour, like, it doesn't have to be long. Give yourself that time. It could be just as simple as having a bath, uninterrupted, right? And like going to the toilet, uninterrupted. Little things that are going to make you feel good about yourself.
Yeah. And if you haven't got family support, I was just trying to think, okay, because I've had some women that have brought that concern up with me. I'm like, okay, well, what solutions can there be? And I'm just thinking right now, there must be some sort of daycare option where you can put them into care for one day a week or something and just use that time to do something for you, or join like a parent group and each parent looks after the kids for 2 hours once a weekend or something and shuffle it around. There's got to be options. There's got to be a way.
Yeah. I think you start getting creative about it. Like, it could just be as like, look, if you're a single mom and you're doing it hard, you've got no support. And look, I know there's women out there who don't have support. Do something for yourself. It could be as simple as dressing up, right? Putting on some makeup, putting on some eyelashes, wearing a nice dress, wearing nice lingerie, something that's going to make you feel good internally. And it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. Like, if you've got your child all the time, then that's understandable and you're doing the best that you can, but then also give some of that love back to yourself.
There are some gyms that take kids like an hour or so.
Yeah. There's creches and stuff that you can use at the gyms and stuff. Like, I mean, my gym has one that has a creche.
That's cool.
And you just like, you book it in and And then it's pretty easy, and they look after your child while you go to the gym.
Mm.
Or even just going to like having like parent groups, using that time, and then just going somewhere where you actually all can enjoy yourself. Like I know there's a lot of kids cafe, depending how old your children are, but there are kids cafe where you can, like I just let my son roam around, and it's fine because it's a safe environment. Like I can still see him from wherever he is, but I can actually just sit there and enjoy myself. I can sit there and enjoy my food. Like as a mom, generally we're scoffing down our food, right? We don't have time to kind of sit there and eat because you've got a child running around and stuff like that, unless they're a little bit older. But it's just those little moments that you can do for yourself. Like there's play centers and stuff that do that, or there's always options. It's a matter of you being creative and finding it.
Yeah, planning and finding some as well.
Yeah, and finding something that works for you. So what fills my cup is completely different to what fills somebody else's cup. For some other people, it could just be like watching a TV show at night.
Yeah, and maybe even utilizing, even though you may not be very impressed with the narc or your ex-partner or your current partner, but maybe even utilizing them. Do you know what I mean? Because they are 50%, they're a parent. Maybe they can take your child for like half a day, even though they're probably not going to raise them the way that you necessarily want them to. Like you do the best with what you've got, like you make it work somehow.
Yeah, and like use them. They are one of their parents, and get them to step up and be like, I need some me time. Do you mind taking our child for like a couple of hours? And if they don't, they don't. But then at least you've asked. You don't know until you've asked, right?
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
With the co-parenting agreement you had with your ex-partner, if they're not, because like a lot of narcissists might agree, but they're not actually follow through and do it. But like, how did you manage his behavior to get that in place? So even though he went downhill after 2 months, like what sort of things did you do to kind of ensure that would actually come about and happen? Do you know what I mean? Like, how did you both sit down and go, okay, cool, so this is our number one priority. Yep, cool, it's our child. Okay, so what do we want from this? Like, how did you create it? I think that'd be very useful for listeners to know.
Yeah, so following the DV, filing for DV, going to court, having that accountability session with my coach, and then getting accountable with my ex, it was about having the discussion about how do we really want to move forward? Is this what we're doing, what we want to continue to be doing? And I'm sure they're going to say no. Who wants to have a fucking high conflict relationship, right? I don't think anyone does.
Yeah. Would you suggest doing that with a mediator maybe if they're really difficult? If
you don't think you can do it by yourself, get other people involved. Get a third party involved who's going to be unbiased. There are free mediation agencies out there, but there are also private mediators if you want to get it done quicker, right?
And therapists, and I reckon there'd be like some parenting coaches out there for sure.
100%.
There are options,
Yeah, there are options, and just get really clear about what you want. And the first step was I actually wrote majority of the proposal, and I was like, so I spent time writing it out. And maybe this is what has to happen if, both people aren't quite on the same page. Write everything out, but make sure you clear your shit first. Have a discussion first, because you want to come into it from a place of
a good place, not an angry, frustrated, pissed off place.
100%. Yeah, come into it with a good place and come into it with a place of love. So talk about your shit first, whether it be on the same day or a different day, but really have that conversation about, okay, so what's going on in this relationship dynamic that's not working? What's going well? What do you feel need to change? Like, or what could I do to be better? And like, have it in a conversation that's not going to blame, because that's like, if you're going to blame somebody, they're just going to go into their defensiveness and
solution-based thinking.
Yeah, 100% solution-based thinking. It could be conversations like, how do you feel that I could be better in this co-parenting relationship? What do you think I need to do in order to make you feel that this is going to work? How do you want your role to be as a father? How do you want your role to be as a mother?
Very good questions.
What are your expectations around this? Because regardless, we all have expectations. As much as we do. So what are your expectations around this? And then start having those really open questions and stuff like that. And then what in the past, it could be like stuff like what in the past, is still like bothers you and stuff like that. Or is there stuff in the past that's still coming up that's going to be an issue? Because if those issues are not dealt with, this shit's going to keep coming up, and it's going to manifest, and it's going to manifest, and it's going to tenfold.
We're like weeds. They're going to come up unless you tend to them and pull them out.
Yeah. And then once you've done that, then you can have the conversation, okay, so how do you want to move forward? Like, what arrangements do we want to have in place in regards to changeovers, in regards to who can look after our children? And really be open and have those difficult conversations. This is not an easy conversation. It's not. It's a very difficult conversation because it's about your child, but then sometimes emotions can come in and stuff like that. So really
Conflict of values as well.
Yeah, conflict of values, different parenting styles. So just come into it with a space of open mind and just kind of like have those open conversations and those really difficult ones, and then start making a plan, write it out, and then have
Have
like
copies.
have copies, right? And then refer back to it when you need to. And it's like,
and re-review it, I would imagine too, as like little juniors getting older, or that partner comes into the mix. How's that going to look like now?
Yeah, definitely. As your co-parenting relationship dynamic changes, as your child changes, review it, because obviously things change, things happen, and and you revise it and stuff like that, but be open to it. At the end of the day, regardless of how you feel about your other co-parent, you're stuck with them for 18 years or more.
Or more. You'll be thinking about your child's wedding or birthdays. Like, you're going to try and get along for the sake of your child as best as you can, even if you might hate their guts, and that might be something you might need to work on with somebody to release some of that pain. Like, fortunately or unfortunately, you're going to be around this person, even indirectly. You're going to hear about your child coming home and talking about daddy and his new partner, or dad did this, dad didn't do that, whatever. Yeah, you've got to start thinking about it's the long term of how you want, I guess, your relationship to be. And most co-parenting relationships, they don't happen overnight. No, there's no quick fixes with this, because it is complex.
There are no quick fixes unless both parties are really able to then take accountability and really own their shit, then yes. And that's really rare to do at first instance. It takes time. It takes time for people to grieve the relationship. It then takes time for people then to heal from the relationship and then recreate it in a way that's going to be then powerful for everyone involved.
100%. I love that. Thank you for sharing all your insight and knowledge and information. I think that was actually really useful because it's pretty practical. Do you know what I mean? Like, there are tangible things that can be done there. Like, for example, looking at what sort of beliefs you've got about your ex or current partner, like they're stupid, finding the help that you might need, dealing with your own stuff and having personal reflection and self-awareness. And then, as you said, looking at potentially having a co-parenting agreement in place, getting some coaching therapy or something like that. Work on boundaries, open communication, enforcing all your, wouldn't want to say rules, but your boundaries as much as you can, being flexible and adaptable, because we all know that life isn't always certain. Things pop up. We've got to be flexible. We better wrap this up. But thank you so much, Lyly. Where can people find you if they need to, have a chat? Or
they can find me on both Facebook and Instagram at Lyly. So it's spelled Lyly, Evolve.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you soon.
No worries. Take care, lovely.
Bye. Thank you for listening, sister friends. For more support and one-on-one coaching to help you through your own recovery journey, or if you're wanting to start a business in this niche, then you can email me at oliviapowellcoaching@gmail.com. That's OLIVIAPOWELL coaching@gmail.com. To connect with other like-minded women who might be in the same stiletto heels as you right now, head to my online virtual space on Facebook by searching Overcoming Narcissistic Relationships with Olivia. Just answer the entry questions and feel free to invite your girlfriends. Or come and hang out with me on YouTube or Instagram, where you will find pretty pictures, uplifting and thought-provoking quotes, and tons of value that you don't want to miss. If you enjoyed this episode or something has resonated with you, then be sure to subscribe to this podcast so that you're informed of every single episode that comes out and so you don't miss a thing. Share the love by passing this on to someone that you know who would benefit from hearing the free content of this podcast. And I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes, because your review will help the success of this show, so that it has the potential to reach many more women who would benefit from hearing this message too. For more beyond this podcast and places to reach me, please see the show notes for all the links. Until next time, much love, Olivia.